Some fathers get one single phone call in the middle of a long, dark night that shatters everything in one terrible instant. I got 3 entire days of complete silence instead, and that silence very nearly destroyed me before my son said one word. My name is Dale Whitman. I am 52 years old, and I run a medical equipment repair company outside Cleveland, Ohio. My company, Ironclad Biomed, calibrates and repairs the machines that hospitals absolutely cannot afford to ever lose for even one single day. MRI units, surgical lasers, and equipment that quietly beeps and hums while it keeps real human beings alive through every single hour. I built that entire company with my own 2 hands, my aching back, and years of missed and broken sleep. I built it so my 2 sons would never once know what it felt like to go without something they truly needed. My own father shipped out to war when I was only 7 years old, and he never once came back home again. Nobody ever taught me how to throw a baseball, and nobody sat beside me when I was scared and afraid at night. So when my son Nathan was born, and Cole came 2 years later, I made myself one quiet, unbreakable promise that day. My boys would never once know that kind of emptiness, and for 25 long years, I kept that exact promise faithfully. Then on an ordinary Tuesday in late May, a lease renewal notice arrived in the mail for Nathan's apartment down in Miami. It was a luxury high-rise downtown with a wraparound balcony overlooking the bay, the kind of place I never grew up with. I had co-signed that lease years earlier when Nathan landed his very first serious job, so my name held the place up. The renewal was due in exactly 5 short days, and the property manager just needed one small detail confirmed about Nathan's income. One simple phone call, 30 seconds. That was all it should have taken. So I called Nathan straight from my office desk. It went straight to voicemail, so I left a quick message telling him I had the lease paperwork ready for his signature. By the next afternoon, he still had not called back, which was unusual for him but not yet anything close to terrifying. I called Cole next, assuming he would know exactly where his older brother was, but his phone also went straight to voicemail. That night my wife Renee noticed I had barely touched my dinner, and I quietly admitted that neither of the boys were answering. She reminded me gently that they were grown men and were probably just busy, but my stomach still felt like it was folding. By the 3rd day, my simple annoyance had quietly transformed into raw and genuine terror that I could not push down anymore. I called Nathan 7 separate times and Cole another 5, and every single one of those calls ended in the exact same silence. I stopped eating completely, and every single time I closed my eyes, I saw twisted wreckage scattered across a dark highway somewhere. When you lose a father at the age of 7, part of you never truly stops expecting the world to take people suddenly. At 1 in the morning, I sat helpless on the edge of our bed, and Renee finally sat up behind me in the dark. My voice cracked in a way she had not heard since the day we buried my own father decades ago in the ground. 3 whole days, I told her, both of our boys, and something inside me knew with total certainty that this was not normal. Pack a bag, I said quietly. We are flying down to Miami tonight, because I could not sit still one more single minute. We caught the very first flight out of Cleveland, and I imagined every possible tragedy a frightened father could invent at altitude. None of those imagined tragedies came close to preparing me for exactly what was actually waiting behind Nathan's apartment door that night. We rented a large SUV and drove straight into downtown Miami, the glass tower rising high above the entire glittering city skyline. We rode the elevator up to the 14th floor without saying a single word, my hand shaking badly as I raised it to knock. Then I heard music and laughter drifting through the door, and colorful balloons were taped carefully right beside the apartment entrance itself. For half a single second, relief hit me so hard that my own knees nearly gave out right there in the hallway. Nathan opened the door holding a drink, and his easy smile completely froze the moment he actually saw both our faces there. "What are you doing here?" he asked flatly. Not Dad, not Mom, not even a simple question of whether we were okay. I told him we had been calling for 3 straight days, and truly believed something terrible had happened to him and his brother. Renee stepped forward with her hands rising to her mouth, saying we were sick with worry and terrified something awful had occurred. Nathan rolled his eyes and told us plainly that they had not answered on purpose because they simply did not want to talk. "Stop calling us," he snapped. "We have our own lives now, and you are honestly suffocating both of us, so please stay away." Behind him, the balloons drifted gently in the cool air conditioning, and I had never once felt words land like those words did. A young woman appeared beside him holding a bright pink drink, asking flatly if we ever actually stopped hovering over our sons. Renee blinked at her in confusion and quietly asked who exactly she even was, standing there in Nathan's doorway like she belonged. The woman raised her left hand, a ring flashing under the hallway lights, and calmly announced she was Brianna, Nathan's own fiancée. "This is our engagement party," she added coldly, "which you are currently ruining simply by showing up here completely uninvited tonight anyway." Our own son was engaged, and we were finding out only while being told to leave his apartment as unwelcome strangers entirely. Renee's face collapsed in a way I had genuinely never once seen in 28 full years of our long marriage together. Back home, inside our fireproof safe, sat her grandmother's antique ring, polished carefully for 20 years and wrapped in faded blue cloth. She had kept that ring safe and ready, waiting patiently for the day she could give it to whichever woman Nathan chose. Now she stood outside her own son's engagement party like a complete stranger who had wandered into someone else's private celebration uninvited. Cole appeared next, carrying a tray of food, and groaned loudly the moment he saw us standing there in the hallway together. "Are you seriously kidding me right now?" he said. "You could not even let us have just one single ordinary day alone." I told him calmly that I had not come to ruin anything at all, only that Nathan's lease renewal was due the very next day. I explained I was still the guarantor, and that the property manager simply needed one small detail confirmed before tomorrow's final deadline. Cole laughed bitterly and said, "Here comes the savior complex again, acting like signing some paper gives me the right to track them." He shook his head and told me this exact reason was why he chose a college thousands of miles away from home. Nathan nodded along and said I used money and fixing things to keep constant tabs on both of them their entire lives. "I pay my own rent now," he said. "I do not need you acting like some hero riding in to rescue me again." Then he said the one single thing that broke something permanently inside me that I knew would never fully heal again afterward. "We saw your calls the entire time," he said coldly. "We ignored them completely on purpose to see how long it would take. For 3 entire nights I had imagined both my sons dead somewhere on a highway, while they simply watched my name and waited." Brianna gestured toward the elevator and told us plainly we were celebrating tonight with people who actually mattered, and to please leave. I did not raise my voice at all. I simply looked at the sons I had spent my entire life trying to protect. They stood inside an apartment my own signature had made possible, telling their mother right there that she simply did not matter. I took Renee's hand quietly and turned us both toward the elevator, since they clearly wanted to be entirely on their own now. Renee cried silently the whole entire way to the airport, and halfway there she finally spoke about her grandmother's antique ring again. 20 whole years, she whispered quietly. "I kept that ring polished for 20 entire years, waiting for exactly this kind of moment. On the flight home, something inside me changed completely. I had given my sons everything I never once had growing up myself. By the time we finally landed in Cleveland, the frightened father who had boarded that plane that morning was completely gone forever. Renee made it only 2 steps into our living room before her knees gave out completely, and she collapsed onto the rug. The very next morning, I called my attorney Frank Delgado and told him to remove my name from Nathan's lease guarantee immediately. Without my signature backing him, Nathan no longer qualified for the apartment at all, and the renewal window quietly closed at midnight. I also revoked the business credit line backed by my own company and warned the bank about Cole's unreliable Jeep loan payments. 3 weeks later, a yellow rental truck pulled up outside our house, both my sons having driven 18 exhausting hours from Miami. Nathan stood crying in our living room, asking how I could possibly destroy their entire lives over just one single family argument. I told him plainly that they had watched us call for 3 days while believing we might actually be dead somewhere out there. Now the world was simply teaching them exactly what their own silence had already taught both Renee and me that terrible week. I rewrote our entire family trust so that when we are both gone, our estate funds scholarships for children of fallen veterans. Now Renee and I simply sit together on our back porch each evening, finally understanding what truly matters after everything we survived.